Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge, and I am joined by my good friend Meaghan Dee Duncan. And so Megan's been on before, and I'm excited always to have her back. I feel like it's talking to a younger me sometimes because we're so similar and we love our dogs and love design. And anyway, I just love having Megan on. Not that kind of sounded creepy then, but anyway. I want to, if you don't know Megan, Megan is a professor at Virginia Tech, teaches graphic design, but then she also does all this really cool stuff. And today we're going to just pick one thing that she does that's really cool, and it's these postcards. So, Megan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And hey, everybody in the chat, thanks for coming, and hopefully you guys will feel free to ask questions and plug stuff away over there and make us laugh. So, Megan, tell us a little bit about your background and where you started exploring design using collage, or when.
Right. So I'd say, as many things do, it sort of started in graduate school. So I went to graduate school about 5 years ago at Virginia Commonwealth University, and it was really during that time that I started keeping more sketchbooks, and maybe the year or two leading up to that. I'd never done that before. And so in graduate school, I produced dozens of these sort of either notebooks on different themes or sketchbooks in general. A part of that was because I didn't have any clients, and so I didn't know what to do with myself, so I thought sketchbooks were sort of a safe place to do those things. And even filling sketchbooks for me was sort of, and sharing those with others was a first step in that they were very intimate objects to me. Mm-hmm. But I was really getting pushed to do things beyond the sketchbook. So, and if there was a way of making something more public, and that's where the sort of postcards and collage came in, and collage was part of the sketchbooks as well. But the idea of literally taking something I might have put in a sketchbook and sending it out, so it wasn't so intimate and personal, and also letting go of something, not keeping it so precious.
All right, so grad school for me, we went to the same grad school, so they really like you to push yourself and do things that are different. So one thing, you start that exploration, was it an easy thing, or was it just like, did it feel uncomfortable?
I'd say I started it to get myself more comfortable with, like with the sketchbooks. One thing I'd done is on Issue, I scanned and uploaded all my sketchbooks at the time to make it more public and get used to sharing things with others more freely. And I think, too, when you have enough of something, it's not like you're being judged just on one drawing. It's sort of this cumulative mass. And with the sketchbooks, the idea, or the postcards, was also to have interactions with other people. So a sketchbook is something you generally keep for yourself, although I've done a couple of those Brooklyn Art Library where you fill out a sketchbook and then they keep it on file there. But by interacting with strangers, by mailing them a postcard, which is kind of like a page from a sketchbook, it's both sort of that moment of surprise for the recipient, but also letting go and then figuring out how to document all of those things. So that's where the blog came into play.
So you presented this at this conference that we both go to. It's called CCAC. It's for college art instructors or professors or whatever. Anyway, and it was, you showed so many images of these postcards, and it was just, I was just trying to keep up, and I had to just put down my notes and just take pictures because it was so much eye candy. So to me, I end up overworking things. So I think if I played more and if I did more of this, then that would be, Levi's over there, he's saying, and Megan already commented on your poster, just so you know, before we started, Levi. She was liking your poster, and I gave you some kudos beforehand. But anyway, I should have gotten the glairless glass, but I'm too cheap. So anyway, but the pieces for me, it's maybe in my sketchbook I'm not as afraid. Maybe it's because the public, you don't show those things publicly. So I think that's a really big encouragement for me to hear what you did. But did you always work, because you have, it's, a lot of them are kind of minimal and you're just including parts of things. What? And Catherine was at Secret too, so she wants to know which panel you were at.
Oh, I don't actually remember. I think it ended up being a hodgepodge. I was going to be in Kevin's graphic design. His graphic design art doesn't matter with a different topic, and then I sort of helped out by switching panels. This was originally going to be a Picha Kucha 5-minute, and I just thought I'd show a whole bunch of postcards, but ended up doing a full paper on it. Sorry for not having an answer. Hopefully CPAC isn't watching.
Yeah. So what about when you have you always worked really simply, like you don't overwork, or did you used to overwork?
I think it really depends. So the postcards, I guess when I started it, I'd asked 10 friends in 10 different cities to give me a list of 10 addresses, and like 3 of them gave me a couple addresses, but that's where I started sending them to, and then I just started finding random addresses online, used like the AIGA website used to have a list of all the graphic designers' addresses, and so I sent it to like all the Meaghans in AIGA and everybody in Wyoming, just like 5 people, but at least the ones that had their addresses listed. Although AIGA, for some reason, has removed all of the addresses. Somebody might have been sending creepy mail to people on it. But it's really depending, just like a sketchbook is like other things that are going on. So for a while last year, I was working on learning processing, so I'd sometimes print off a processing sketch and draw on top of that. Or lately I got obsessed with the Milton Glaser 10 Things I've Learned. I think I haven't mailed those out, but so each of his things, I don't know if you can see those very well.
Yeah.
For each of the 10 things, I wrote them out on an individual card, so each of them will go out as a card. And then I also kind of trying to play more with hand lettering, so even the way I address the envelopes then relates back to that. Other things, like this was scraps left over from grad school, so playing with hand lettering and manifestos, and the ink spots might have even been from undergrad, so I might be a hoarder, but I try to be organized about it. So when I'm really in the collage state of mind, I have a big trunk with a bunch of papers and various materials, and I'll sort of look for something that might seem interesting or spark an idea, and it kind of gets messy. So I'd say if I'm collaging, it's much messier, whereas if I'm doing something hand-lettered, it's...
You're getting a, I'll send it to you. I'll copy Jason's. I know, you can actually email her.
Funny.
You can probably email her, right?
Yes, you're welcome to. I can put my...
Do you want me to do
sticky or not sticky or in the chat?
You can do it as a sticky. Do it as a sticky. And then that way it'll be at the top. So if you want Meaghan to send you a random postcard, and I'll copy Jason's for you, and I'll send it to you after this. We all can send Jason one now.
Oops. So that's where all the postcards are right now. I was thinking I might try to get people to mail me a letter first, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I had my first show of them in November at just a little local art shop, so not like a super over-the-top show, but I had reprinted, at that point it was 317 cards, so just the one side, and put them up on a wall. And then I had a little notebook I kept at the show where people could put in their addresses. So I think I got 54 addresses from that, so this pile is all going to people on that list, except for one that was a little bit too creepy that I'm going to end up sending to a friend. I think that one had a figure drawing from when I was an undergrad that I got when I went to my mom's house, and this weird list I found in our studio that some student had written, but it says something about, you know, eat, sleep, close door, pet dog, and pet cat, and then it eventually goes on to killing his uncle, so I figured that might be too terrifying to send to a stranger.
Especially if they think you're writing this.
Right, I was like, I'm not planning on killing my uncle. No, I don't. So if they get super creepy, then I might try to send it to someone I know, or at least a graphic designer, not somebody's grandma.
Right. So Brian says if you keep things tidy, you're not a collector, you're a hoarder. I mean, you're a collector, you're not a hoarder. So what about, I mean, you're sending these out, so you're taking digital pictures of every single one, and now you have fronts and backs, right?
Right. I scan everything. So some of them, like
Oh,
this one that I just did, that super looks like a psychopath, doesn't really have much on the
it's
back, but it's
beautiful,
got a.
Megan.
Thank you. That was this morning. Not grading. The things I will do to not grade. Maybe that's what this is really all about. Uh, but so some of them, like the front and back, will be sort of equally dense, and other times it's really just more about the one side. I call it postcards, but now they're all in envelopes, partly because some of them used to have leaves that I'd cut up and put on top, and I realized that they were getting peeled off. So at first I was very zen about the whole thing. If something breaks, let it break. The process of going through the mail and getting a stamp is part of whatever. And now I'm kind of pulling back and going, I don't mind being a little bit more in control. And
Right.
actually,
Yeah. Do you want to get something?
Yeah, I might.
Okay. Okay. Here, I'll show y'all some pictures of some of Megan's things while we do this. So, to me, hopefully this one will come up. To me, I like this one a lot, but here she's back.
So I don't have a very huge office, so that didn't take too long. Yeah, so the other thing I do then, so I
Hold it
scan.
up.
Okay. Scan each one. I don't even know if this is right set up, but whenever I get to 100, I turn them into a book. So I have a print documentation, and then they're also all on the Tumblr site, but that way it's kind of a nice organized way for me to hold on to them, as well as the Tumblr site. And I used to use a QR sticker on each of the postcards that would link to the Tumblr site, so if people were curious where this thing came from, and I think for the first 5 I wrote out an explanation of who I was and why I was doing this, but I thought the QR code was a little bit simpler. Now I'm just doing a little tag that has it handwritten on the envelope, so that, because I kind of got over QR codes.
Yeah.
So, like the rest of the country, I suppose. But.
All right, so.
Hi, Brian. So I didn't realize that was that Brian. I can look out my window and wave to you.
So what about the books? So could somebody buy those books, or is it just for you?
I think I have them live. I just did Lulu books, so it's frankly not a very good deal right now. You're welcome to buy them, but I think for the one-off of like I guess it would be about 100-page book, it's not a great deal on Lulu. Sometimes they have a good coupon. So it's not meant to just be a super private thing, but I mostly did it for my own record, and I like turning things into books.
Right. Well, it's a beautiful book. It
Thank you.
Definitely is something that would get me. But I like. Whoops! I just dropped my pen. Hang on a second. Okay.
Like
my
magic.
office also is not so big. It just went downstairs again. But to me, the Tumblr is neat because you can actually move it in front and back, and that's kind of a cool. You can really tell when you switched from doing just the fronts to doing the front and backs, and I really like those. And I like that you're not really giving me much explanation, and that I have to go and hunt a little bit if I want to find what the explanation is. So do you want to talk about some of the work real quick while I ask you the next set of questions?
Sure. What work am I talking about? The postcards?
Can you see what I have on the screen?
Oh, I can't. I can pull that up, sorry. Now I can. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes. It doesn't matter what you see. I'm controlling. They're seeing the big one. Big.
Okay. So
this is number 50?
Okay, I got it. That was in grad school. I got obsessed with library cards that were no longer being used at VCU. So I went in for a while. I made a book that was just library cards, and I wasn't stealing them because I no longer used the system, but books with interesting titles, I went in and took out the little library card, and then I used some of those for various collages. I liked it sort of as this artifact from my childhood that sort of not used anymore, and I like seeing the dates that happens and the layering of information.
then a lot of them have some limited color palette, and then you're using some paper. Did you buy a whole pack of French paper or something? And
That is Nina Desert Storm on the last one. I really like Nina Desert Storm, which is why I can remember the actual paper name, and it's a weird name for paper. That one I made some.
Buy reams?
Do I what?
Do you buy a big ream of paper?
That one. For the blue one, I don't remember where that paper came from. My old graduate studio had a weird basement. Plus, if I get paper samples, or I know my old interior library at the architecture firm I used to work for got rid of a tremendous number of samples. So a lot of this stuff, like this one's actually on an old fabric sample or like a wall covering.
Oh,
so
cool.
That goes back to the hoarding. But a lot of them it'll be paper that I liked and bought, and relating to things that I have. So a lot of them have those stencils. That one is a stencil I made with a laser cutter, and then I ended up even mailing out the stencil as a separate one. I liked that because I could generate a lot real quickly. That one I think is even kind of related to this one.
Yeah.
So I think those ink studies were from a book I did in undergrad, and for some reason I had this little box of stuff I still liked, so that's where that came from, playing with stencils on top of that.
Do you ever have a hard time cutting something out that was something big?
I don't know if I'm doing it too much to anything that is still precious. I'm not trying to take something that I love and cut it up, but it's also sort of strange, like going through some of these manifesto explorations or stencil explorations from from graduate school where I did nothing with them. So there's something kind of nice about being able to go back and do something more with them now.
So what made you want to start sending them out to strangers?
I think that was that whole sparking an interesting interaction with someone. The one you have up right now was a series I did right before Valentine's Day one year, where I think I was inspired by Meaghan Dancy's. She does a lot of correspondence. She has a list of like 140 Valentines, and she makes something cool for each of them. But I liked that idea of making a Valentine for someone who might not be expecting to get one or might not otherwise. But there's something kind of interesting about design for one person versus design for the masses. And in this case, I wouldn't say it's necessarily graphic design. Probably isn't, at least not in the traditional sense. But again, I like that. What do I do if I'm making something that'll stand out for one person versus making something that appeals to a large-scale audience?
So you and I both really like David Sedaris, and I know you've sent him a postcard.
And he wrote me back. I have that.
Oh, look, it's in your basement.
So, can people still see me, or do they just see the thing?
No, now I have it. You're big.
Okay, so he sent me this one, and I was a creep who sent him, I think, 22 messed up four-leaf clovers, and said something about how I don't know if he would be as good of writer if he hadn't experienced all of these sort of not perfect things. And I find four-leaf clovers a lot. And then I got to see him when he was at the Center for the Arts, and I gave him a regular one. But so it was fun, and he said he always tries to write everyone back, so if you like David Sedaris, you should write him a letter, because he'll probably get one back. But I really like that interaction with maybe an individual that I know something about. Phil Plate's an astronomer that I really like, and I'd heard something by him on NPR, and I was really jazzed up about it, so I laser cut him all of the constellations of the Northern Hemisphere, and then when you folded it down between the holes, it had a message to him. And I got his mailing address. So it's kind of fun to have that interaction with somebody that you might not otherwise get. And also the people that I really like who are famous, I don't think they necessarily get David Sedaris probably does, but I don't think most of the astronomers of the world get fan mail regularly. I might be wrong, but so.
So do you, how do you get their addresses? Do you have some link to some database, or are you just sending it to their work address? What?
For David Sedaris, his whole response was about how I sent it to the wrong publisher and sort of barf barf. But it eventually made its way to them. I also try to use my fancy handwriting, which my theory is if you use really nice handwriting and make it look like you shouldn't throw this letter away, people will try harder to get the letter to the actual person, which has worked for me so far. For the case of Phil Plait, I just emailed him and asked for his mailing address. So, yeah.
So that's pretty good. So do you consider? Can you hear me?
Now I can. What was that?
Do you consider yourself an illustrator?
I wouldn't say I necessarily define myself as one, but I think that I do illustrate. And there's been a couple things that I've done that are very much illustration. If I like some murals and things for my old the architecture firm that I worked for. So I do think that there's a lot that I've done that's based more in illustration. I also think design tends to get more interesting when you try different methods, not just the same thing all the time.
Right.
Like that, I don't know if that went somewhere, but like the mural that I've done or various things that don't have type in them, so I can't even pretend they're close to design.
Right. Oh, I have to. Well, let's see what you did. Oh, yeah. Oh, you did the whole mural?
Yeah, that was 128 feet and like 6 feet tall, and then they installed it in like 6-foot vinyl sections. So, and it was based on this retro poster that the owner of the resort liked. So that kind of stuff has been interesting. Like the piece that's up right now, the 235, that was just playing with letters, and I started numbering the postcards as a suggestion from when I was still in grad school about if this grows, it would be neat to see what number you're at some point. It's also kind of nice because I keep track in a Google Doc, a non-organized keeping track, so barely keeping track of who I've sent them to. So I know 235 went to Diane. It didn't go to you, but I could look up and find out who it went to.
So that's pretty cool that you're doing that. But I love just the texture. Again, I love the use of type. To me, you're playing, but you're also illustrating, and you're doing a lot of really cool stuff. So you told us about the famous people that you sent
which wasn't
stuff
part
to.
of the postcard project. That's just random correspondence, which is probably the same thing.
What about yeah, Brian, it is a cool 2 and a 3. I think that's really awesome how you did that.
Thank you.
What about the kind of responses you get from regular people?
Yeah, there was one that I sent, I think 199, I might be wrong, but I got this cute picture back of the recipient holding it up and smiling, which I thought was really cute. I think I might even have, this was one letterpressed one that I got back from someone talking about how postcards are cool, reason number 17. And I heard postal workers aren't allowed to read these, but that some do anyway. Whether or not that's true, who could resist? So I think that was one of the ones I got from sort of in response to this project. I got, I don't think I have it up, but another couple just from people who either heard about the project and sent me one and wanted to get one back. And I do like that as a longer term idea of, I don't know if I'd set up a P.O. box or just give people my work address or what, but if you mail me one, I'll mail you one. And I even think as far as long-term putting a book project together, that could be a really neat correspondence.
I definitely think so. So let's keep looking through some, and then tell me if you have a favorite. And we already talked about this before. So
I was like, I don't know. I mean, I get sort of on things. That one was actually, I used that as a handout for a small experimental typography study, independent study group that I was working with, and then I just made an extra one and sent some off as postcards. So a lot of times it'll relate to some other thing I'm doing. In this case, it connects back to teaching.
Was that like linoleum, and you cut it out?
So there's a couple different ones around that one that have different color studies and things, just quickly done. And then that one I laser cut out from a not linoleum, but the pink version.
Easy cut.
Easy cut. So I just laser cut that bit out, and then underneath, this was part of a print exchange, but I thought it's the perfect size to also be a postcard, so I made one off as a postcard. That's kind of getting back more to collage, or I think finding things at little antique stores, playing with the numbers and sort of older numbers and newer numbers, and more intuitive. I think I like collage because it's not so planned. Seeing if things work. And I know one of my big things that I was influenced by was this Jasper John quote that goes, take something and do something to it, do something else to it, pretty soon you've got something. But the idea, you might find something that's a nugget of interesting, and then you do something else with it, and it becomes a little more interesting. And I used to get really worried about messing up a design or an illustration, and I think I had to let go of that, and I think it's allowed me to make some more interesting things.
Oh, definitely. All right, so yes, like this looks like a digital photograph, but I don't know if it is or not.
They're all just high-resolution scans, except for some of the early ones. I have a pretty nice scanner, which helps. And then that was a bunch of letters left over from, I think, my MFA show. So I saved them. I call it Glitters because it's glitter letters.
Right.
But I think Cassie and I came up with it. But so then I got sort of that Mod Podge kind of stuff, so you couldn't take it off. And that was trying to push to what could work as a postcard. Again, it probably would have been better if I stuck that one in an envelope, but I wasn't there yet.
Right.
So, same kind of thing, taking some fabric and overlaying it on top of images, and by sort of securing it down, it looks like it would move, but it doesn't at this point anymore. So. That one was specifically sent to my friend Adam in India. Normally I don't send them to friends. I'd say maybe 1 in 25 I'll send to a friend. But I don't think he knew about this project, and he has a parrot named Burball. And so, and he likes sitting on people's heads.
So how often do you start working on projects like this? Like, how often are you sitting down? I know you said you did it today, but how often?
It really depends on when I have time. I start to get that itch to make things, and sometimes I'll be too busy, so I don't get to all the time when I want to make things, but I've gotten better about having a place at home where I can work too. I don't totally share an office, but there's like a door with another room, but it's not really a private space that I have at work. So by making a place at home where I can work, it's nicer. And also, if I don't feel like putting on real clothes yet, I can work in my bathrobe and pajamas. Right. So I'd say that makes it easier to do more regular work.
So like once a week, twice a week, 5 times a week?
Well, this week being spring break, much more frequently. So probably more like 3 or 4, possibly more this week. You know, if I'm not leaving town. So if I'm at home and not working, much more likely. These days I try to have one dedicated day to work. So I try to block off. This is part of my getting better at time management, and also preparing to try to get tenure. But so the more I read about time management, the more it seemed consistent that if you can block off a large chunk of time to get work done. And so sometimes for me that might be having a day like all of yesterday. I also worked on making postcards, and also the documentation part of this project takes a little while as well. But during a typical work week, I try to have Monday be, whether it's writing a paper or a presentation or sitting down and making stuff, that one day that might be postcards, and it might be a poster I'm trying to finish or something else. So.
My problem is that I always everybody else comes before that stuff for me. If I scheduled in time, I might do it. But do you ever find that that's a hard time?
Yeah, I
Hard to
do.
do?
And I'd say, no, I don't want people to know that I'm doing this. No, I'm kidding. But what they say you're supposed to do is actually schedule, and if you need to, on a calendar, chunk off whether it's 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever you need. But I need uninterrupted time, especially if I'm writing or doing something like the postcards, because otherwise I'll just not be in the right mindset and I won't ever get to that nice flow state. Uh, but if you don't respect your own time for scheduling and doing those things, like you would never, if you had a meeting with your boss or a student, you wouldn't say, oh, by the way, somebody else wanted something, so why do you do it to yourself where you don't let... That being said, if something urgent comes up, yeah, I won't do it. But it's still sort of a nice habit for me to know that I'll have that one day a week where I can get a little bit more done. And if I'm lucky, maybe it's 3 or 4 days.
So will it be hours at a time?
Yeah, I tend to work for hours. And like this morning, there were maybe 2 postcards that I sort of did from scratch, and then I had red paint out, so I had all these other bits that I sometimes will just cut things down to be a postcard size or materials that I like, and then I added some paint to it. But if you're working with paint, if you're going to add something over the top, then you have to make sure the paint's dry. Otherwise, like, you can't write text on top of paint until the paint dries, and so...
Right, so you have to work in stages.
Right, and so I might not have finished stuff at once, but I'll get going on a handful, and usually if they're still out, I'll want to come back to them. And then sometimes I just want to be clean, and I clean up my office, and it looks nice again, but I'm not working in that state.
Right. Well, let's keep looking at some of your work. So do you have a laser cut machine at...
I do have access to a laser cutter at Virginia Tech, and so this one was actually a thank you note I created when I was interviewing for jobs last year, and so I had extras because I got this job. I didn't need to keep sending thank you notes.
Right.
So I sent one off as a postcard.
Cool. So you design it in Illustrator and then you send it to the laser cutter and it cuts it out. It has to be a EPS or?
For ours, you just save down to like an Illustrator 9, and then it actually runs out of CorelDRAW, which I hate, and it runs on like a PC version of a Mac. So I always mess up the computer by pressing quick keys that then freaks it out. But yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just having outlined versions of things. So
cool. It looks small. I mean, it looks like a lot of detail.
Yeah, it's, I think, 5 1/4 inches, something like that.
What about this one?
That was more collage and kind of playing with these nice lines. Sometimes I think I go more modernist than others, maybe. And I had these old pieces of material that I painted, so like the yellow is not actually paper, it's painted to be yellow. Mm-hmm. So sort of playing off those accents and balancing out with a little bit.
So do you work with themes like today? Did you work with, I mean, you had red out, so does everything kind of get a little taste of red today, or do
you... Everything the only paint I got out today was red, and I'm partly because I was realizing even the paint that I had said Art Coupe on it, which was the art store at University of Illinois, which I'm amazed that the paint wasn't still dried up, but I don't buy paint that regularly, so I'd say I have a handful of colors to choose. Well, I might have more than a handful, but since it's not actually about making a painting, although I can't necessarily say that if you're using paint, but it's more about getting those pops of color and playing with different textures. So yeah, it is more of a limited palette. I wouldn't get out all of my paints.
Right. So would you do something like this and then in 15 minutes later work on something like this?
I think I was doing those 2 the same day, actually, because they were nearby, or at least the same week. So that was a bunch of French paper samples that I cut up, and I think even though the colors are very different, there's some similarities. Like, I was really interested in sort of the wider line with a thinner line, and geometric shapes. So this one's more about circles, and the other one was more about triangles. But so they look very different, but I wouldn't say they're completely different. And I tend to do more natural colors, but also some warm colors like yellows, oranges, and reds. So.
But so it could be that your theme that day, you're not specifically going to work on a theme and you're only going to work on geometric shapes, but it could be a starting place. Is that something you would encourage somebody to do if they wanted to start somewhere, like have a list of some different themes to start from so that they're not just like staring at a bunch of
Right. If you're really interested in
collection?
collage, right. In collage, I would say, like this is actually cut up from a collage and then repurposed that I'd done in summer class I took with Rob Carter at VCU in grad school called Typographic Collage. And Richmond is a legit city, so if you go out and it's just rained, you'll find little scraps of paper and old cardboard, and you can dig through things and find interesting materials and rusty bottle caps and things. So he would send you out and you would collect a bunch of things, and then you'd come in and you'd spread it out all over your desk, and then you'd just start collaging. So, and also finding moments on the page or on your desk. So he does this trick that I've done sometimes now in classes as well, where you get 4 pieces of white paper and you crop out just a section of what's on your desk. So sort of that viewfinder of, is this an interesting moment? Why is this an interesting moment? So working before you're gluing things down. So I think there's a little bit of that opening yourself up to serendipity when it comes to collage, but also that intuitive design sense. Okay, well, I used green with the stamp. Maybe I'm going to put green in the letter form, and then the blue is balanced out by the blue stamp. So some of it is thoughtful decisions. Others is the, okay, I like where this is going. Then you might step back and ask why.
So to me, and I don't know if it's just me, but I probably wouldn't have put those lines in there. And then, but to me, it goes back to you being working for an architecture firm. Like it's those lines and drawing those fine lines. And I think everybody's work always, it comes from your history and you pull things that you know. Do you think that you do more? I mean, your husband's an architect, right? Or
yes,
works. So do you think that those things play? Like, I love how you did it, but I wouldn't have even thought to put lines in there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out now why I would have put lines. I think there's also that nice shift in scale. Like the 284 seems sort of massive now if it's next to a tiny line. And if I had just left the big triangle and the line without the medium-sized element, so I think some of it's that balancing out. And there's definitely themes. Again, this was pretty close to the other ones you just showed, so I think I was drawing a lot more of those lines. Mm-hmm. I had this leftover tape from a newspaper I used to work at, that little thin sort of one-point line you can draw, but with a mm-hmm. piece of black tape. So early on in a lot of my collages, and I still have this stuff, I would get, those kinds of lines from the tape, but I think I liked working with that as an element. Mm-hmm. So I think even if I wasn't playing with the tape, that might have influenced where that decision came from. But so not necessarily unrelated from architecture.
Right. Yeah. So Brian had a question. Do you make the cards for specific people or decide who to send them after they're completed?
Yeah, so for like the 50 some odd people that signed up in the little book, I knew a couple because a few students came to my show, and so that kind of thing where, all right, I know that particular person. But for the majority of them, I have no idea who those people are. So I can't even design for them really, in that I don't know anything about them, even more so than if I say I'm pulling somebody from the AIGA listserv, then at least I know they're a graphic designer, or I know I've sent ones randomly to architects, or I've sent them also to firms where I have friends that work that aren't necessarily design firms, and then I see if they figure out that they know me. So, and one time I accidentally mailed one, well, I didn't accidentally mail it, but it showed up to my friend Carol's office, and her friend popped her head over and was like, weird, look at this strange postcard I got, and she went, I'm sure my friend Megan sent that to you. So sometimes it's very direct, and other times I'm sure it gets lost in some random department.
Right.
I guess the answer is it's more about kind of creating this specific thing that I want to. But I think after the fact, if I don't have a list, like right now I still probably have 20 or so people that I'm planning to send letters to, then I might say, okay, well, these lines make me think of an architect, or maybe I'll look up a random architecture firm and send it to somebody there.
So, all right, let's keep going back to them. Do you send out every single one that you make, or do you have some duds?
That's a good question. I'd say I don't think they get finished. There was one that I was just working on. This one, I think this one is sort of, it's been around a long time because it says, when does a postcard stop being a postcard? And I'd actually printed that, and then I wrote over the top some other things in silver Sharpie, and then I tried doing something to the back on this old design I'd printed out, and I didn't like it, so then I put a picture over the top. So I'd say I kind of kept going with it, and I think that I wouldn't say it's my favorite, so sorry, Heather. Oh, this person is also hilarious because I did not come up with the name. Now I'm giving their address away, so I shouldn't do that. But somebody put the nickname of Heather Sexy Pants. So I addressed it to Heather Sexy Pants. But I figure if I went along with the name, they can have a mediocre postcard.
Right, that's a good way to think about it. So sometimes you're putting things down and then you're cutting them to be the postcard size, like this one that we have on screen.
Yeah, that was also I think a leftover from these collages I'd made in Rob Carter's typographic collage class, and then really making them smaller, usually adding something more. In this case, I don't know that I added something the second time around, but it's kind of that some of it I might have just thrown away or kept in a drawer for years. Like a lot of this stuff has literally been in drawers or folders for years and years. So it's kind of nice to do something else with them.
Cool. We're going to keep looking.
Okay.
I think this one's awesome.
It's letterhead. Get it? Yeah. Okay. So.
I love it.
Thanks.
So what's the paper on that? It looks like maybe cardboard, or?
That's actually one of the wall covering samples. So the back of it is sort of this woven texture, and then the other side is this really beautiful, I think, silver woven kind of, or it might have just been a regular weave. You can kind of see on the edges that it's not quite clean because there's fibers and things there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really like that one. All right. What about this one?
That one I had some cut-ups from, I think I was going through old paper samples when I was clearing out For Design, which is the student design center here. They had all these magazines from like 1980, and there's a limit on how much sort of garbage you keep in that sense. And we do have a stockpile of collage materials in the studio as well. But I was going through and seeing if I could find some. I thought the image was funny, full body jumpsuit and black and white stripes, and then I had these. This is definitely influenced from stealing things from architects, but those old lines that you could lay down. It wasn't exactly letraset, but sort of that film. So playing off that, then.
So has it made a difference using different sizes, like the 4x6 or 3x5, and then going to these longer?
Part of that relates to the envelopes that I own. So like, here's 3 different sizes that I have right now. So the business one is sort of where the long and skinny came from. And then I have, some square ones as well. With postcards, I was always trying to maximize it at whatever the mailer was for that. So I don't think it would go over 6x6 usually.
So how much money do you spend each year? I know this wasn't on postage.
I think it comes down to probably $1 per postcard, but not necessarily quite that much. But if you think about buying letraset letters or Polaroid film, this one I made there was something I liked on my desk with the letraset letters, so I took a picture, and I have this thing that can turn your iPhone into a Polaroid camera, so then I printed that out, and then I think the other side actually has the collage. So one side is the collage and the other side is a picture of the collage.
Cool.
So,
Is it a app or is it something that you put on your iPhone?
it was a Kickstarter from forever ago.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was just sort of this box that you can, and then I waited too long to use my film, so it expired, and that's what's wrong with the edge. But I like
that.
This. Yeah, it wouldn't be good for like a picture of your dog, but it's great for
none of our dogs.
Collage. Yes, yeah. Our dogs are too beautiful to.
So yes. Is this the other side, or is
no?
This
I think that's a different one, but. Right. Yeah, again, sort of playing with the film, and I never used photographs of collages, which was sort of fun about, and I don't know that I would have if I had to actually go develop them, but by having the Polaroid with the expired film that I couldn't really use for anything else anyway, so there was really no harm, no foul.
Right.
It was fun to have the letter forms appear in that way.
So. All right, so I just really like these, Meaghan. To me, it was so nice to see these, and they're so different. Like I can't imagine you doing all of these in one sitting. I can imagine some parts, so I'm glad to know that you're kind of doing some pieces and then coming back. And this looks like your Nina paper again, maybe your Desert Storm.
It's a beautiful paper, and I bought 500 sheets of it. Yeah, so I think ones like that, whether it's the letters or actually sort of writing out something, these are sort of nice because it's the thing I can do while watching TV.
Right.
And I'm sort of weird about being I'm an introvert in making, not necessarily in doing. I like teaching and being around people in that sense, but to sort of re-energize or for my making, I'm very private, even not wanting husband to see too much. I'm trying to get better about that since, hypothetically we'll be together forever and I should probably get over it. But this is the kind of thing where I don't feel self-conscious making in front of other people, so I can sort of figure out the framework and then watch Modern Family and doodle in the lines. So
you are like me. I love that show.
I'm like
This one I think went to a friend of mine here in Mobile who met you at, I think, CCAC. Wanda, I think.
So leading up to CCAC, I got the CCAC book of all the presentations that would be happening at the conference, and I sent out probably 17 or so postcards to people that would be at CCAC, which was sort of like a shameless plug for getting people to go, except for to my talk. Except for I don't think I explained that I would be at CCAC or anything about the project, so very inefficient design marketing. But I am from St. Louis, and I found that baseball forever ago, and I just liked it too much, and then someone gave me that card because they knew I had that piece of baseball, which is a weird thing to know about somebody.
So then did you just use Mod Podge, or are you using gel medium or matte?
No, I think sometimes it's, sometimes I'll use double stick tape when I don't want bubbles. Other times, this was probably just regular old Elmer's glue. These are probably not being made in the forever sort of way. But there's also a roughness to them, so like not worrying about imperfections, or I kind of like that there's little bits of yellow, red, and pink on the side versus being a pristine white sheet of paper. So, and other times I'll be more OCD about it, and everything will be very clean. But
these look like the letter set, like the pressed, peel letters or whatever.
They are. Yeah, so this was when I'd had my MFA show forever ago. I had these floor-to-ceiling ink things that I printed out sort of cheaply as a backdrop, and then a bunch of sketchbooks and things. And then on this corner where there were stairs, I made a miniature version of my show, which is a weird thing to do. Like an ant would see it and it would be the same. But I think I'd saved the little miniature version, and that's where this card came from.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's for the little people.
It's for the little people. And this one's actually more real scale because that was a piece of tape that I'd masked to not let the ink go there.
Oh, cool. Beautiful type here.
Thanks. I love Alan Fletcher, and that's sort of how he used to write, but not exactly. So there, a lot of these will be influenced by either things I'm reading about or writing, or yeah, really love Alan Fletcher. Wish I had discovered him pre-2006.
So I don't know who Alan Fletcher is, so I'm writing it down.
Yeah, I think one of his books is Picturing and Poeting, because I'm looking at it right now, and then I think the other one was The Art of Looking Sideways. Both really great books. And he was really he was more of an artist, but he did a lot with that beautiful hand lettering and play. He was really into collage and sort of making words out of, like making the words Evian say naive or something like that.
Right.
This one I sent to my friend Brandy, or actually I think she might have just made me give it to her and not have it go through the mail. So this might be the only one that didn't go through the mail. But playing with sort of the other side of those old peel-away film containers and not the part you'd normally use.
Is this the other side?
No, that's a different one, sort of a tiny collage. I think that was one I'd originally done sort of as part of that typographic collage, but then I repurposed it. This is one I should have put in an envelope because I can pretty much guarantee you it didn't show up looking like that. But not that that looks pristine anyway, but I liked that one, and now I'm sad that it's probably gone.
It is really beautiful.
Thanks.
Hey, more lines.
More lines. And some of them, I think, this to me could really be the jumping off point for something like a poster. So in teaching, I'll do a lot, or not a lot, but usually in their junior year, I'll do 1 or 2 collage projects. And then with the end goal being a poster, so not collage for the sake of collage, but as a way of getting you to make things that you wouldn't necessarily normally make and to look a little bit different than what you'd normally do. And I think most of my collage does look different, but I could see this becoming a poster that you'd make on the computer.
Yeah, totally. And I love these. I love the red splotch ones.
Thanks. There'll be many more coming since I played with red paint again. I do think I like those natural tones, and I sort of tend to do that. A lot of these have cut-up manifestos. John Malinowski had us do write manifestos, find manifestos. I think there's a lot from Post Typography. If you're not familiar with Post Typography's design manifesto, it's pretty funny. So.
I can't write. Okay, so this is one that looks like what you're sending out.
Yeah, I actually really liked how that one turned out, and when I had that show at the art shop here, I ended up turning 4 postcards into posters, sort of a 16 by 20 size, and this was one that I made large. Part of it had to do with which ones I had scanned in at a higher resolution, and so this one I liked the way it looked aesthetically speaking, and it was also, if you're writing out something, it's kind of like you read something and that's one level of processing. If you write it out, it's like you're living with it for that much longer. So.
Yeah, it's great.
Thanks.
I love the feel of that one as well. Hang on, let me go down here. It's easier. And I use this one, I think, as part of the one of the promo pieces because I loved this. I love the old stamps.
Thanks.
And then that swoosh and that color of the Desert Storm Nina paper. It looks like.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this sort of series. I have a bunch of those stamps, and I think the lines, I guess, are coming back. Now I'm very aware of the lines. But I think there's something, too, about this was a pretty small one. I mean, you have a good reference point with the stamps here. But I think I'd also use this one or a similar one when I blew it up. So it's kind of fun for me to take something and make it strange. So whether it's a stamp on a postcard that's not actually the stamp on the postcard, or taking something small and making it quite huge. So
it's beautiful.
Thanks. Oh, this is one that I received from someone. So that was just, yeah, and that's where I used to live.
So how much are stamps now?
I don't know. They're all forever stamps. So, and then I always tend to go on the side, if I don't know how much they are, of putting too much postage on, because I get really mad if they get sent back. So,
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, totally. So
well,
this
and
looks
when I
like,
was, oops, sorry.
no, go ahead.
This is actually one that I received as well. It's the other side of that one you just had. So, I
So
think
she made
it,
her own lines, but not
yeah.
like yours. But
So,
that's cool. You're getting some back.
yeah,
Oh,
and this
look,
was when I got back as well.
you blocked out your address there.
That's, that's not even where I live now. It'd be fine. I can tell you all of my former addresses. Yeah, I think earlier on I would scan things too before. I, I'd written the addresses on, and now I try to scan them before I write addresses on. So
Right.
this was from Chromatope. He was
Sorry.
actually a friend of someone that I knew in college and thought it was interesting, and so sent me one. It was the first one who sent me one before I sent them one, I think.
Oh,
So
cool.
that was kind of fun.
Do people spell your name wrong ever?
In life, very frequently. I don't think for postcards I have gotten too many spelled wrong, but
Right.
emails all the time.
Brian says that this design recharge brought to you by Nina Paper Company.
But
We have Desert Storm.
It's
That's
beautiful.
funny. So is this somebody sent, you got it back from, or
This was
this is one you sent out?
the other side of the
Oh, of that.
one, yeah.
And so then this is one. We'll
Yeah,
go
that's
quicker because,
that one.
oh, whoops.
Yeah.
That, there's your greetings from Austin. Yeah.
So,
And
also
then,
received.
and I know we have 3 minutes
Okay.
left. So, how does it influence your professional work, Meaghan? Like that one you said, oh, I could see this as a poster.
Yeah, I think that it does encourage me to make things in ways that would be different than I would normally. Uh, it also is nice because since I'm teaching, then I'm not spending as much of my time with clients, although I do have some client work. So for me, it's nice to have this ongoing project that whenever I feel like making, I can kind of immediately jump into it rather than what do I feel like doing today. And so I think part of it is just the being a maker. It is my way of doing so. But also just it's nice if I'm doing a lot on computers to get off computers now and again. And I like the idea that even if I'm not doing something with them now, maybe I could be sort of that archive, just like a sketchbook can be an archive, maybe use an idea later on.
So you've talked about how it influences you in the classroom, and it professionally. Do you think that giving yourself this time? I had somebody that I interviewed before said they really spend like 15 minutes before they start doing a project, and they spend 15 minutes playing, and so they can make a mess, and it doesn't matter. Do you think that something like that would be a huge help for if you're about to start a poster project for a client, to actually go and give yourself time to start working on a more postcards before that, or do you think that you don't have to play so much before it, just any time?
I don't think I necessarily have to, although there's things that I'll sort of have rolling around that I might want to save for something else. I would say too that most people, I think, with that, getting back to productivity and me sort of getting obsessed with how I can be more productive and help my students be more productive, is that the biggest challenge a lot of the time is just sitting down and doing it. So whether it's a poster or a logo design or making postcards, I think, especially if you tend toward perfectionism, which I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, that you can make all sorts of excuses for yourself, like, oh, the room's messy, or I should
Right.
gym, or I should do all these other things first, or the dishes aren't washed, or I could do laundry. But if you just sit down and get to work, a lot of times it comes. I don't really run into the problem where I can't remember having run into a problem where I just am staring at a screen or my desk and thinking, I can't do anything. That's not been my problem. My problem is more about sitting down and getting to work. So.
Right. Well, it's kind of like what you said. You'd rather make postcards than grade. And so sometimes you just have to sit down and grade, or you just have to sit down and do those other things. But it's really important for you to make sure you take the time to and schedule it in. It's not like something you do once a month or just once a week. You're giving yourself time at night to do these drawings when you're in front of the TV, or you're giving yourself time every Monday. You have some time every Monday that you've committed to doing that. And I think that's really inspiring and helpful for somebody that needs to do it but doesn't do it.
Well, and I think you probably do. It's probably just not postcards. But I think that especially for professors or anybody that might have a full-time job where they might not be getting all of their creative side out, how you balance having that job and those obligations with the making side. And there's a book on that that's really cute called Daily Rituals, that it's just a bunch of sort of page-long excerpts of all these famous people like Murakami, and how that author starts his day. So, I don't know, sort of nice to see how other people have done it. Although a lot of the people in that book seem to be alcoholics.
You can start your day that way
with a grain of salt. Yeah.
Right. Well, do you go anywhere specifically, or do you tend to be drawn to a certain artist or type of artist, blog or anything like that you go to for inspiration on a regular basis?
I'd say I do read a lot. So,
like, what do you read?
Creative Confidence. I'm like, let me look at my bookshelf. Creative Confidence by the Kelly brothers was really great. Since I've been really into this whole inspiration / how do you inspire yourself? How do you inspire your students? Twyla Tharp has one. It's more from the choreographer's perspective. But same kind of theme. And then other times it'll be more themes of things I'm trying to figure out, like learning more about human-centered design or dabbling in processing. So I'll have very ultra-specific things. But
the book, William asked what the name of the book was, and you said Creative Confidence?
That's the Kelly brothers one, is the Creative Confidence. I'm trying to remember the Twyla Tharp. It's really tiny type. So I can't remember. I can spell her name, though.
Okay. Oh, Twyla with a Y. Okay. Well, we'll look it up.
Yeah.
Well, Meaghan, we're out of time, and I know you got spring break to do, so you probably have more fun things to do. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
For always being willing to do this on your spring break or wherever, and you always inspire me. So I hope you guys got something out of Meaghan's stuff. I'm going to share her 3 places that she has links, which right now you'll see her postcard site, meaghandee.tumblr.com, and then there's also your sketchbooks, which you guys should go and look, and some are on issuu.com/MDEE, and then but Meaghan or Meaghan D. Oh yeah. I'm like, it looks like Meg and. Oh yeah. Okay, I gotcha. Oh, thank you. Catherine said it says the creative habit. Learn it and use it for life. Yes. Thank you so much, Catherine, for finding that. But thanks, Meaghan, and I really appreciate it. And next week, just so you guys, we have the designer who has curated Calligratype and Illustri, and those are both Instagram, and you'll be surprised he's just a junior in college, and I think he's done an incredible work, and for so young to be so committed to this, I think is just incredible, and I hope you really enjoy it as much as I did talking to him. I talked to him on Saturday, so I'm real excited to interview him, and I hope that you guys will come next week. He's big on Instagram, and he, anyway, neat guy. So I can't wait to have him on. Meaghan, thank you. And somebody asked if I was going to Creative South, and yes, I hope you guys all go to Creative South. Megan's going to try to go next year. But it's terrific. Catherine can attest for it, and so can Levi or Tron, whatever our name is over here, whatever virtual name we're using today. Anyway, so Meaghan, thanks again so much. You were awesome. We got through all your images except the leaf images, but I felt like we got through the postcard, so I was happy about that. But thanks again so much, and thank you guys for all coming, and I'll see you next week, same time.
Bye. Thanks.